So in this week's episode, boy, do I have a lot of topics that I want to cover and share with you guys. If this is your first time coming across me on the internet, I'm KB. I enjoy talking about healing trauma, ego death, and learning to live in alignment with your intuition. In this video, I'm taking you guys through what my life looked like prior to my first trip, what ego death felt like for me, and how that ultimately changed the entire trajectory of my life, which gave me the courage that I needed to move across the country by myself. If you're in a similar position as I was years ago, or you're just interested in hearing more about these topics, hopefully you're able to gain something from this video. 3 years ago, when I did the mushroom trip, I was 20. This was right before COVID happened. I remember at that point in my life, I was very heartbroken. I was dealing with a lot of depression, was dealing with a lot of manic depressive episodes. Didn't really know. I had an inkling that I might be bipolar. I don't know. I just really didn't spend time taking care of myself or like tuning into myself to just feel good about myself. I think the way that I handled difficulty and adversity in my life, as I did for most of my life, because I grew up in a very traumatic environment, very low income, very much was a caregiver for my mom. She was ill ever since I was 3 years old. And so there really wasn't that stability or support that I saw in my household. Not only because, again, we were low income, but also because one of my parents was like always ill, and I would always have to step in and take care of them as a kid. So that parentified me at a very early age. I never really got the opportunity to tend to my inner child. It was like this mentality and this pressure, this go of like, there's a lot of pressure on me and I have to provide. And if I can't do that, then I'm a horrible kid, right? And so there was a lot of that, a lot of internalized expectations of who I should be, what I should do, on what timeline it should be. By the age that I'm 22, I should be married, I should have kids, I should have a house, I should have a husband. I so heavily internalized or repressed so many things. I really legitimately was convinced that I, was this whole other person. And so enter me in middle school, high school years. I heavily focused on my studies because, again, there was this pressure, this script that I felt I had to follow of like, go to school, get to a really good school, study something lucrative or something that can like support me as an adult and like lead into having a family shortly after graduating. Just keep seeing me go down here is because I keep trying to stop my laptop screen from turning off because I am recording here on my laptop. Hey, don't you step on that. It's my cat. So yeah, if you guys see me looking down, that's why I'm looking down. Or because Beepies is here. She's here. Wanna say hi? She said hey. Yeah, where the fuck was I? Yeah, anyway, I had these expectations, and I know if you're around my age, if you're in your 20s or even older, and you've gone to college and you've done that whole thing, chances are you know that pressure. As I've talked to people, the older I've gotten, the more aware I became that like, yeah, obviously it's not me that just feels that way. Obviously a lot of people feel that way and they're scared and they don't know what to do about it because for so long we're pretty much indoctrinated, brainwashed to do things a certain way, and we're social creatures. We are built to connect with others and need that validity for us to feel like we're good enough. And so it makes sense. Like if you're in a similar situation where you're struggling with something because you're struggling against like what you want versus like what you should be doing, it's normal to feel that way. It's normal for you to feel empathy for somebody else and their feelings and want to cater to that. Now, what's not normal is for us to like repress our feelings to the point that it becomes mental illness. That's not normal. So college, high school years, I am dealing with a lot of stress and pressure. And that's when I began to feel really disconnected from myself. Like I had already dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety when I was like in middle school. I really do believe that when we're experiencing depression, like severe depression, it really is our soul trying to call out to us and like get us to wake up because we're doing something that is hurting us or we're not paying attention to ourselves enough to fill our cup, and that's why we get depressed. And so I had already dealt with this when I was in middle school, and the way that I dealt with it was by focusing on like, things that they typically tell you to do when you're dealing with depression, like going for walks and like exercising and eating right and like get a therapist and maybe go on medication. But because I had such a deeply internalized belief of me not being good enough, I didn't feel like my depression was actually real, and I didn't feel like, again, I could go to my family and like tell them, hey, I'm like really struggling with this and I don't know why, and like I just need support. Like that wasn't the environment that I grew up in, and so I chose to just deal with it head on by myself. And you know, I started doing these things like exercising and prioritizing my mental health, and that helped to an extent, but I still struggled a lot socially. And I think it's because, you know, I was repressing a lot of things like my sexuality and my gender identity, and also just like I really didn't know who I was. Yeah, you're not really supposed to know who the fuck you are when you're like 15 or whatever, but deep down I had this sense like something was just always really tight and knotted inside of me. In social situations, I struggled a lot. I struggled a lot with like making friends, and so it was easier for me in high school to focus on studies because I had something to look forward to. Like in my head, I thought it's fine, like I'm gonna get to a good school and I'm gonna leave this shitty town and I'm going to focus on building this dream life that I've been told that's gonna fulfill my whole life, and I'm gonna make my family proud and make my parents proud, and then I can like pretty much like throw it back at people's faces that like I was good enough and like I did the things that I was supposed to do and I'm good enough, you know? Good on me, like pat on my back. So that's how I used to think. I focused so much on school thinking that would resolve this deep pain that I had known ever since I was a kid. You know, fast forward to college, I got into a really good college, but I ended up turning down the opportunity because I didn't want to get into debt. And I ended up going to community college. And at this point in time, I had also met my now ex. It was my first girlfriend. Prior to that, I'd had literally no experience dating, like no idea what I was doing, just that it was new and it was exciting and I wanted to explore, and started dating, and it was unsurprisingly very toxic. Just from what I've told you guys about my upbringing, like I didn't have emotional support very much, and I didn't really know much about myself, what I wanted to do. I felt like I walked through life wearing a costume and a mask. I walked through life not as myself, and I didn't fully understand this. What I did know is that the relationship was a sort of escape, and it allowed me to not have to think about this like deep feeling of despair in my life. That relationship crashed and ended horribly after like a year and a half. After 2 years, it was like no contact, nothing. But that relationship and like the depression that I endured during it, I think really was the foreshadowing of the start of my spiritual awakening, because a lot of like my internal wounds came to the surface. A lot of the things that I had yet to heal were right in front of my face constantly. I had to look at these things after the relationship ended, because it was like, okay, I can try to blame everything on this person, or I can try to learn from the experience, because chances are if I want to not cause harm to the next partner and to myself, I'm gonna have to like pick apart what went wrong. That's where my like intrigue for spirituality really started, because before this I was not spiritual. I was very much an atheist, and I think the trauma very much made me an atheist. Like enduring a lot of the really traumatic shitty things that I did when I was a kid made me believe there is no God out there. There's no reason that all these horrible things are not only happening to me, but I began to think the millions of people that had dealt with even worse things than me. And so fast forward to the end of 2019. This was about almost a year after my first relationship ended. Prior to that, I had got into another sort of situationship. Again, I was just doing that. I didn't know, but subconsciously I was getting myself into relationships because I wanted to run away from the feelings, the really negative, uncomfortable feelings that I was feeling about myself. And so I didn't want to spend time with myself. I really just wanted to like have somebody come and save me, basically. A lot of that trauma that I internalized as a kid, that helplessness and feeling like disempowered, really echoed out into my early adulthood. Fast forward to the end of 2019, I was already at this point, like after my first relationship, 6 months into the breakup, into like focusing heavily on like my spirituality and like, what is this all about? Like, why so much pain, God? Like, what is the point of everything? Is there a God? Why are you letting these things happen? And then being like, if there is no God, then what is my existence? And this is something that I had already grappled with at a very early age. And so it's like, why is this coming up again? You know, I thought that if I did the things that I was supposed to do and just followed the roadmap that I was given by other people, it was supposed to make the pain go away. I didn't really have resources or people to talk to about these like feelings that I was feeling other than like one friend, and that's a lot to unload on one person. But anyway, going to therapy and like trying to like sort through what I was feeling, there always was this like heavy tightness, blackness that I really couldn't see further than like my pain. So I always felt like pulled back by this deep negativity and like shame. So I started doing research and I started hearing about mushrooms. I started hearing about psychedelics. I started hearing about like ketamine and LSD and how people were able to like tap back into themselves. Basically, these people were giving like a new life. You know, like logically in my head, I thought it was like an antidepressant almost. Like you just take it down the hatch. It's yesterday's problem. Like you're good. I thought just reading a few books and, you know, doing what people were saying on these blogs was gonna set me up for that. And like, yes, in theory, doing your research and hearing from people how they set themselves up to have a positive trip is helpful, but it's also like you really have to lay the groundwork for you to set yourself up to have a good experience, right? And I couldn't fathom that. I was still very much caught up in my pain. Like the pain was the motive for me taking the psychedelic. And at this point, like I didn't tell like a therapist or anybody, like I didn't tell my family that I was planning on doing this. I didn't tell my friends necessarily that I was planning on doing this. I really just like internalized this all and was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like do my research and like try it and see what happens. Picked a day, January 26th, that's when we're doing it. So that day I woke up, went to the park, didn't have a scale or anything. I had heard to only do 1.5 grams or so, but I didn't bother getting a scale, didn't bother asking the plug to weigh it out for me. I just like fucking winged it. I remember driving into the parking lot of my favorite park and being like, all right, well, we're just gonna take like half of these. It's like 3.5 grams for the whole thing. So if I do my math right, that's like a little bit less than half of this jar, and we'll just do it and see what happens. I took like half. An hour goes by, I don't feel anything. 2 hours go by, I still don't feel anything. And, you know, at this point, like I was just like kind of sitting in my car when I started feeling things. You know, I had brought my ukulele and like I brought my journal, and I was like, we're gonna try to ground ourselves. Like at least I'll give myself that. Like I wasn't that dumb where I was like fully like in like panic mode and was like taking them. Like I think for the most part I was like pretty chill when I took them, because again I had planned this, the thing that I hadn't done, I guess, tapping into these deeper core beliefs about myself. Like I didn't know that was essential for the trip to be good. As soon as they started hitting, I remember just like seeing things morphing, you know, things started visually looking different. The trees looked fucking weird. My hands started looking fucking weird. Like I could see my veins and my blood pumping under that. I was like, damn, like this is real. Like I'm alive. It's like as I was coming up, I was enjoying it. It was like taking me out of like the negative state that I was in prior to that. And so I remember being in the restroom and like feeling disoriented and like not really being able to stand up straight or like walk right without looking weird. And I'm sure I must have looked fucked to everybody that was at the park. Like it wasn't super busy that day. I just remember it feeling claustrophobic and being like, why did I pick a public place? Like I wish I was like nobody could see me right now. I just remember feeling very vulnerable, again claustrophobic. You know, I felt like I was like walking in like mud, like trying to fight against gravity to like go find a safe spot to sit on the grass. And when I finally got to the grass, it looked like the grass had little tiny hands, and they were all like, all the little grass blades were holding hands and were like dancing around in a circle, like a choreographed, synchronized, aquatic aerobic dancing or something. That's what it looked like. I was obviously entranced by it. At that point, I was just very much focused on like the external, like after I was able to, you know, sit down, like I was still in the back of my head thinking about people, how I was like anxious. And I think at this point is when I texted my brother and I was like, yo, I just took some shrooms. I'm at the park. Can you come? The visuals that I was experiencing were so much that I was feeling anxious, because I was like, oh man, like I am at a public park and I don't know how long this is gonna take, really. Like I've heard people say that it could take anywhere from 5 hours to 6 hours to maybe 8 hours, and I just took a bunch of them. I was somewhere at like almost 2 grams probably, and like I hadn't eaten anything other than like a banana the whole day. That's when I remember all these like negative, scary feelings taking a hold of the experience. I started feeling watched and judged, and I started feeling like I didn't weigh anything. Like when I was walking to the restroom, I felt heavy, but when I sat down and as the trip was like, as the mushrooms were digesting and hitting me, and I was like starting to like come up into ego death, I remember just feeling like weightless and scared. If I didn't lay down and like try to put all my weight on the grass, that like gravity would just stop working and I would float off into space. Like it felt like space's gravitational pull was trying to like take me away. And I was fucking scared. I started just crying. I just started fucking crying. And again, this is a public park. There's like people around. There's families with their kids. And me in my brain, I'm like trying to experience this so that I could feel better. And I'm not feeling better. I'm feeling scared. I pretty much just lay there for like 2 hours as the thoughts ramped up into like worse and worse thoughts about myself, about what my life was, about why my exes didn't want me, and like, you know, how shitty I was, and how I was too scared to listen to myself, to like try the things that I really liked doing because I was scared that people were going to judge me. And like I would envision, you know, people being mean to me, and I would flash back to instances where I was bullied as a kid by other kids or by like family members, even things that they would say, and you know, the things that I would do to myself without realizing that they were hurting me. Things like just contorting myself and my personality into somebody that I wasn't, because it made the judgment go away. It made me more digestible. It made me blend in more. And that's why I would do these things. And that just made me really deeply sad. And even like remembering now, I'm getting emotional. Yeah, because it doesn't leave you. Like the things that we experience when we're kids, right? Like they're foundational to who we believe that we are the older that we get. That stuff gets like really burnt in there, you know, like it really gets recorded into your subconscious. And, you know, when you wake up, you may not realize it, but you are living in a way that is informed by that. You're traumatized because of that. Trauma really is such a complex, interesting thing. And, you know, as I was like logically thinking about that in my head, just like realizing how much damage I'd done to myself, it made me sad. It was really painful. I wanted to, you know, not be alive at that point because it was so painful. It was a lifetime of pain that I was feeling in that moment. Sitting there in that moment on the grass, crying my eyes out with families around, I felt so vulnerable. I felt like, damn, like I want to just like walk into traffic right now. But because my body, I was like so disconnected from my body, I was just so in my feelings. Like everything felt heavy. I couldn't just like get up and do that. And I'm so fucking glad that I didn't do that. In the back of my head, I was like fighting off that instinct because, you know, there was like this thing in the back that was like telling me that I just needed to be there in that moment. Like I just needed to sit there and feel it. I didn't understand why was I having such a shitty time when I was supposed to be having a good time. When that thought ran through my head again and I started looking up at the sky, like trying to make sense of everything, I remember looking at the clouds and they were just shifting and morphing. I remember them changing from like a clown shape to like a dog shape or to like different things, like right before my eyes. It was within seconds that I was seeing this fucking happen before my eyes. That started pulling me back into reality, and I was like so entranced by it. And you know, and I was asking like, why am I having such a shitty time when I thought I would have a good time? And like, what is all this? I remember just looking up at them and being like in connection with them and feeling like comforted by them. I like got this download, this intuitive knowing of like it's whatever you want it to be. There's shifting realities all the time, and it was like, can you see now? And I think that's why the clouds were shifting and moving around, is like I really fully believe that I was communicating with that fucking cloud that day. That truly is what brought me back. Making sense of that visual and that information and that feeling was like that silver lining that I needed in that really dark, scary trip. I just remember accepting like, yeah, things are shifting and changing, and there are different realities. Yeah, I did do a lot of painful things to myself in the past, but now I felt like I had a knowing. Now I felt like I had I could see it all from like a higher perspective. And so that really just like filled me with so much relief, because it was like, it's not going to be forever. This is actually going to end. And actually, we're at the end now. Like we just started a new chapter, and then the ego death happened. I just remember this rush of euphoria, and like everything was technicolor and everything was dancing and singing, and I wasn't I was looking at my traumas as if it was like somebody's movie, like somebody's life story movie. Like it wasn't me. It wasn't like I was watching my life. Like I didn't know who the fuck KB was, or like these memories of like friends and family. I was like, these people are strange. Like I don't know them, because my identity was dissolving, my ego was dissolving. And when I let go of trying to hold on to that ego and that narrative, that's when I found the relief. That's when I felt the like, which is what I was seeking at the start of it. Like I went into it with the expectation of what it should be, and I wasn't accepting everything that was. I wasn't accepting that I had played a big part in everything that I had created in my life at that point. I didn't want to accept that I had done things to other people that were painful because I was in pain. I didn't want to accept that I had not lived out plans and dreams and goals that I had for myself because I was scared. And I would blame people, and I would say that, you know, this life that I have is because, you know, my parents, they're cursed. I've inherited their cursed genes. I didn't want to accept that for whatever reason. This is my life, and I had more power than I thought. Climax happened, ego death happened. Oh, it was fucking beautiful. It was just, wow. It truly is ineffable. I look back at that, and I think that's really what has carried me through, because there was just so much wisdom from surrendering, like from that moment that I decided to surrender. And so that's really how I've started living a lot of my life ever since that trip. Of course, it has taken me time. I didn't know what I know now then. Like I just knew that it was the start of something. I just remember my brother being like, because my brother showed up to the park, and then I told him everything about the trip, and I was like, damn, like I was bawling my fucking eyes out. And then I just like gave in to whatever I was feeling and just like let it be. And then it was wonderful. We're hanging out there for a little bit, but then when we were leaving, he was just like, yeah, well, now back to the same old life. And I remember that striking a nerve with me, because I was like, no, I'm not going back to that. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna get out of this shitty job. I'm gonna stop dating people that are really just to fill the void in my heart. I'm gonna stop forcing myself to do things that I don't want to do, and I'm gonna start tapping back in with those dreams and goals that I had when I was a kid, because that feels nice, that feels good, and I feel like that's my purpose. I remember having now all this information, right, having all these downloads, seeing all this painful stuff, and I knew deep down that I didn't want to keep living the life that I had been living prior to that. Everything had to change, pretty much. For one, something that came up a lot was just feeling like I was robbed as a kid, feeling like I hadn't pursued things like music or YouTube because I was scared. And so I decided that I wanted to do these things, but I was dealing with a lot of internalized shame. Like the psychedelics really highlighted a lot of my shameful feelings around these things. I was struggling to like function every day because of like what I resurfaced. I ended up getting a therapist, a trauma-informed therapist, so that she could help me with making sense of the things that happened. And I remember at this time, there was a lot of talk of COVID. What is that? And like, what's gonna happen? Didn't know if it was gonna like become a really serious thing. I didn't that wasn't on my brain at all. Like what I was thinking about was like this mushroom trip and how I felt and how I really like deep down, I was like, fuck man, like I have to go to school and like I still have this job that I don't like. There's just so much space that they're all taking up, and it doesn't let me focus on like these things that I want to focus on, these things that feel urgent because I have neglected them for so long. Fast forward to February or March of 2020 when they announced, so it was only like a few weeks before I had this mushroom trip, that COVID was a thing. It was announced and people had to stay inside. I know it sounds bad, but I was just so relieved because I had time to pause. Like, it felt like the universe really was like, all right, KB, like, we'll give you this. Like, we'll give you some time and space to process so that you could get your leg up. And it really did feel that way. Like, I know that for whatever reason, that shit just worked out that way, but it worked out that way. Like, it worked out in a way that, you know, I wasn't having to be on campus all the time and waking up like super early for my classes, and like I ended up not having to work anymore. I ended up getting unemployment at that point in time because it was COVID, and like ain't nobody gonna go to work to get COVID and potentially die. Around May or June of 2020, I was entering my senior year, and that was the one thing that I was like, dang, like I really wish that I had not gone to school for this degree. I majored in communications, and I knew deep down that I didn't want to do that, but it promised a stable career. After the mushroom trip, it was like, yeah, I don't care that much about this like I thought I would, but I'm just gonna finish what I started. So, you know, if anything goes to shit, like I at least have a degree to my name, right? Like in the back of my head, it was like, whatever. I was also trying to think about it pragmatically, because it was like this mushroom trip made so many things surface that I wanted to do and I wanted to focus on, and they weren't necessarily things that were gonna like pay off well or like work out right off the bat, you know? Like if I wanted to do music and like build a career out of that, or like start a YouTube channel, like it wasn't just gonna happen overnight. Like it was gonna take a lot of effort and work, and it was gonna like take me learning a lot of skills and like trying new things to monetize that and make that my full-time thing. And it's so funny thing about it now, because I just really couldn't visualize how things were gonna work out. I knew that I didn't want to live in my parents' place anymore, and I needed to figure out how to save money and like how to live on my own. You know, I was living in California, and so all of this stuff was just cooking up in my brain. It was freaking me out, and shit at home was not stable, was not fun. I ended up having to move out of my parents' place my last year because I just wanted to focus on school, and I just wanted to focus on healing and integrating all the things that I was feeling. And I just remember spending a lot of time doing like work, a lot of spiritual work. Like I would wake up early and I would journal, and I would do my microdosing, and I would sip my tea, and I would do my yoga, and I would write, and I would visualize, and I would visualize, and I would visualize. I would spend so much fucking time visualizing, you know, like I was just in the clouds. I think back to that year and I was just in the clouds. Like I really was struggling to remain present, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that sometimes you need to do that. I think that sometimes you need to really focus on like what you're trying to create, and you know, sometimes like you need to focus all your energy on that, because as much as I was in the clouds back then, 2021 really showed me how I needed to go further into that like delusional way of thinking. Like I just remember feeling so delusional and so crazy for thinking that I could manifest a better life for myself after I did mushrooms. It's like 2020, I was dealing with a lot of guilt and shame, and I was trying to still be practical. You know, I still wanted to finish college, and I thought, well, if I'm gonna focus on music, well then I need to go to music school, so I should sign up for music school. And so I literally signed up for music school. I was gonna go to Pasadena Community College and, you know, enroll for their music certificate. I started looking at apartments, and I started just like, you know, I started building like in my head what I thought that I wanted and how I thought I was going to get to this happiness and fulfillment. But intuitively, I knew that I didn't want to be there. And the thing that did it for me, I remember I went to go tour one apartment in Pasadena. I was gonna be rooming with one of my friends and another one of his friends, and so it's gonna be three of us and my friend's dog. Fuck it, like let's do it. And I went to go look at this apartment, and it just felt so wrong when I was there. Like when I was touring and I was asking all these questions, and like it just felt so wrong. Like I remember going to the parking lot and like bawling in my car, and driving to Whole Foods and sitting there in the Whole Foods parking lot and having to accept that I actually didn't want to live in LA, and I didn't really want to go to PCC. Like it just felt like I had to do that because it was like it was a challenge, but it wasn't as big of a challenge as like what I actually wanted. I knew that I wanted to move out of state, and I knew that I wanted to just start fresh in a whole different place because, you know, I was born and raised in California, and I had spent some time my last year of college traveling and all that, doing road trips up in NorCal and SoCal. I really desired to travel and see more and go to new places and just start somewhere fresh. And I look back at that, and I'm so proud of myself for taking that time to pause and reflect and just be honest with myself. I think being honest with yourself is really the start of change happening. Even now, being this far along on my journey, that doesn't stop being a constant thing that I keep having to come back to. I keep being faced with challenges where I'm like, okay, let's be real here though. Is this really what I want to do? Or is it once I start feeling drained by something, I start feeling I really dread it. I really actually don't want to do it. That's how you know. Your body intuitively knows. Our emotions tell us these things for a reason. It really is very much our higher self or whatever telling us that that's not fully in alignment with what we want long term. When I accepted that really wasn't what I wanted long term, and I wasn't setting myself up for the bigger picture, I went back to the drawing board and was like, all right, so then I don't want to live in California. Where would I want to live? So that started the process of a even bigger process that felt so fucking insurmountable, that felt so overwhelming, and really I had lost my marbles, because it was I had to break a huge vision like that into smaller steps. Whenever somebody comes to me and they're struggling with trying to start something new or pursue an idea that is big and scary, you really have to break it down, because the smaller it is, the more achievable it actually feels. And honestly, you just make your life a whole lot easier when you break things up. There really is no reason to make yourself more stressed out. We literally live in the year 2023. We have Google, we have TikTok, we have ChatGPT, we have so much technology at our fingertips. You really can make anything happen today. You really can. It takes an idea, it takes willingness, and it takes commitment to that idea, and then follow through. Anyway, and so I broke down that big vision into smaller things. So it was okay, I want to move across the country. I didn't even know that I wanted to move where I live now necessarily. I just knew that I wanted to not live in California, and I wanted a new, fresh start. The reason that I wanted to start fresh is because I felt I had just learned so many things about myself that for me to fully integrate them, I needed to be in a whole new environment that wasn't full of, past pain and traumas and biases of that society and that culture that I was living in. So that's why I felt I just need to integrate myself into a whole new environment. I need to just put myself in a whole new space, and that's going to not allow me to fall back on old patterns, because there is no more patterns. There's no more routine and predictability and comfort that I can fall on. I know that sounds really scary and silly, but looking back on it now, that obviously was so my higher self trying to wake me up and be hey, you can do more than what you are settling for. There's so much more for you out there, and you don't even know. Just let yourself try something fully new. I just started with what I knew did work. So what I knew that did work was grounding myself, and a lot of visualizing, and a lot of just tapping into my intuition. And so I would spend a lot of time going to the park and journaling and trying to connect and ask my guides for help. Basically, the message that I got over time was you already know. You already have places in mind that you've thought about, and you already have a general idea of what you want out of life. And it's crazy now. It's so crazy now thinking about it, because I literally remember sitting on the bench at the park and writing down what I wanted my life to look like. Everything from what I wanted my schedule to look like how much free time did I want, how much money did I want to have, what kind of job did I want to be working, and what kind of people did I want around me. I literally did that. I got what I wanted, and I got more than I even asked for. This is just so wild to me, the power of literally this and a pen and a piece of paper, right? Then started the start of me trying to find where I wanted to move. So I was very heavily into the outdoors, and I knew that I wanted to live somewhere that had a lot of access to nature, or at least some access to nature, and started looking at places that were good for nature people. I started looking at different places that had the things that I wanted on my list. I looked at Denver, I looked at New Mexico, I looked at the Pacific Northwest, I looked at Tennessee, and then I considered Illinois. And so one by one, I pretty much just like knew that I had to do research on these places and like start with like actual tangible data that would inform my decisions from there. Started working with like my Notion and like putting down on there all my ideas, putting down the things that were likely going to work and the things that weren't going to work. This was like the end of 2021 when I was like, I need to like sit down and do research and like really put my mind into it because I want to get out of here. At this point, like I barely had any money. Like I had only like $4,000 to my name. And like that's not a bad place to start. Don't get me wrong. Like $4,000, like that's some good money to have if you're planning a move and you're being strategic about it. You can definitely do that on a budget, but I knew that I needed to have more money saved up because I knew that when I moved, I wanted to give myself a break. Like I was so desperately trying to have a break because I was so burnt out from college and like my past relationships and like COVID was a thing, and so that was really draining, and just like family stuff and trauma, and like there was just too much shit going on in my life and I needed a break. And so I wanted to have money save up so that I could have a break. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just knew I needed to sit down, do research, figure it out. So all that I would basically do is like do research and like go to work. And at this point in time, I was working for DoorDash and like Uber, and like that was fine, like I really had struggled up until that point to get into a career job because I knew that I didn't want to do that. Working in public relations just felt like death, and still feels like death. I worked with what I knew, and then from there I went about discovering what I didn't know so that I could prepare for the unexpected. I almost felt like my mom and my family was just like, what the fuck is going on with KB? Because they didn't know at this point in time that I was plotting to move out of the state. Like, our relationship wasn't very good, and the fact that I ended up moving back home shortly after graduating was like not making our relationship necessarily any better. Like I wasn't spending very much time there. Like I literally was just there because I needed somewhere to sleep. It was better there than living in my car. But there were certainly a lot of moments I knew that I couldn't stay there. Like I'd literally be sleeping at a park in my car. It just got really turbulent and really shitty. And I think that the universe threw that at me to see how fucking committed I was to this plan and this goal that I've had. And I'm so glad that I'm like remembering that now, because it's like, bro, like I really have been through some scary, traumatic shit and I got through it. And I think that when we get through those really tough, traumatic moments, we really show ourselves that we can keep going. We've done it once, we can do it another time. It's almost like the universe wants to test that so that you get stronger. And it feels shitty when that happens because it's like, you already see me down. Like, why are you kicking me when I'm already down? And it's like, it's not kicking you to keep you down. It's to force you to get up. Like, I think the times that I ended up having to be homeless really cemented that I needed to find a stable home for myself. And towards February and March of 2022, I started traveling to, where I thought I would maybe want to live. Like I considered Denver, I considered moving to Tennessee, I considered Nashville and Knoxville, and then I ended up not moving there because it was like, yeah, the nature's nice and all that, and like the people are nice, but like I'm not gonna fit in here. Like I'm not gonna be able to build a stable life with the opportunities that I want in it. Again, going based off of like the things that I've written down in my journal that I want my day-to-day life to look like. And again, I just relied on my intuition a lot. And then I ended up doing research on cities like Chicago. On paper, it was like ideal. And then I came to visit and it was like, yeah, this is the place. I think my first visit was so viscerally feeling like I'd found it, and just like knowing, I remember going back home and just feeling like all this anxiety had washed away because I had just planned it on a whim. Like after coming back from Nashville, I knew that I wasn't gonna live there, and I consulted with myself, consulted with the tarot cards, and was like, universe, like I don't think that's it. Like there's something else. Like please let me know. And then the universe was like, okay, girl, like let's try this. And then I went to go try it. And then within the span of 2 weeks, not even 2 full weeks, within the span of like a week and a half, I found an apartment. I got a job, and I ended up getting money back from a settlement. Oh my God, like I literally got everything that I wanted in the span of like a week. I had money. I had an apartment. I had a job, and I blah, because it's like, I think about it, it's like, what the fuck? Like, how did that happen? Like, what did I do to deserve that? And I know a lot of people hearing this are probably gonna be like, that's bullshit, like, didn't happen. Or like, even like feel envy or jealousy. And like, I hope you don't feel that and let that like fear and like negativity steer you away from allowing yourself to think as delusionally as I had to let myself think, because there was a lot of moments where I felt like I absolutely was crazy, and it worked out. I hope that hearing that makes you think that you can do it, because you can do it. And you will do it if you decide that that's what you want to do. But it starts with tuning in with yourself first. And these medicines, like I've said, these medicines are only one of the tools that we can use to help us reconnect and recenter with this higher truth and this higher power that we have access to. Like, I don't think that it is the one and only thing, but I think that very much expedited the process for me. Everything pretty much just started falling into place after there. I promptly moved in. I had my move-in date on June 17th of 2022. I'd come to visit middle to end of April. So by the time that I left, it was May. Oh no, wait, it wasn't June, it was May. Oh fuck. I literally moved in like within a month. Like, I still remember like end of March, early April, like that's when I had done the whole like Nashville thing, and then scrapped that idea entirely and then fully went into the Chicago idea. And then like within that month was packing my bags and like was on the flight with my cat and was moving in. Yeah, it literally just happened. And it feels like it literally just happened. The last year and a half that I've been here it's been a lot of growth, I'm going to be honest. Like, it's been tough in a lot of ways. And it's like, especially this month, like I definitely want to talk more about what I've learned since I've been here. And I'm already going on like an hour and a half here on my end of recording stuff, so I don't want to make this like super long. I definitely want to talk more about these things and let you guys make your way through the different episodes as you make your way through my channel. But I'm gonna end it there for now, because I feel like I shared a lot. It is a lot. There's more. I hope that gave you guys some sort of inspiration and some insight into what my process has looked like ever since, I tripped, and how that has just like completely changed my life and my way of looking at my life. For the month of November, I really want to make it a priority to get these episodes out to you guys, as much of them as I can. I'm also going to be posting on TikTok. I'm going to be doing weekly check-ins on there, and also just like generally posting things on there that are related to those topics. So yeah, you can look forward to that. I also just recently started a blog where I'll be talking about some of these things and sharing other like writing format things. So like if you're into that, definitely follow. If there's particular topics or questions that you guys have, please leave them in the comments or email me. Reach out to me on any of my social medias that I've linked below. I hope that you guys have a lovely, blessed rest of your day, and keep taking care.